When people think of the Special Air Service, names like David Stirling or Paddy Mayne often dominate the conversation. Yet behind those celebrated figures was another man, often overlooked, whose intellect, vision and daring helped shape the very foundations of Britain's most famous Special Forces unit. John Steele Jock Lewes. To understand the SAS's origins fully, one must place Lewes at the centre of the story, for his mind, inventions and training philosophy were as critical as Stirling's organisational flair or Mayne's fighting spirit. Jock Lewes was born on the 21st of December 1913 in Calcutta, India, into an Anglo-Australian family with ties to both continents of the British Empire. His father was a businessman, and Lewis's early life reflected the mobility and internationalism of the imperial age. From childhood, he displayed a mix of sensitivity and seriousness, qualities that would later translate into both intellectual brilliance and exacting standards of discipline. Friends remembered him as intense, witty, and demanding, a man equally comfortable discussing Plato or Shakespeare as he was with military drill. Even as a young man, Lewes displayed traits of a reformer. He was impatient with mediocrity, intolerant of laziness, and determined to prove himself. Some contemporaries found him aloof, even difficult. Others admired his strength of will and integrity. These paradoxes would later shape his leadership style in the Desert War. Lewes joined the Welsh Guards in 1935 and quickly impressed his superiors with his efficiency and seriousness. He embodied the Guards' traditions of precision and discipline, but also felt constrained by the conventional routines of regimental life. By the time the Second World War erupted in 1939, Lewes was ready to channel his restless energy into something greater. The fall of France in 1940 and the looming threat of invasion stirred radical thinking across the British Army. The North African campaign in particular provided a testing ground for innovation, as vast deserts and dispersed battle lines demanded fresh approaches. It was in this context that Lewes encountered David Stirling, a Scots Guards officer brimming with unorthodox ideas. Stirling sought to create a small elite raiding force that could strike deep behind enemy lines. For this dream to become reality, he needed someone with the intellectual discipline and practical ingenuity to transform it into a functioning unit. If Stirling was the political entrepreneur of the SAS, Lewes was the drill master and theorist. He designed the training regime that defined the early unit. Soldiers under his command endured punishing marches through the Libyan desert, long days of weapons drills, and survival exercises meant to push them to their limits. He believed that only by breaking men down physically and mentally could they be rebuilt into a true elite. The core principles he established, endurance, independence, initiative, and camaraderie, became the DNA of the SAS. Each man had to be capable of surviving in isolation, operating equipment without support, and navigating the desert under extreme conditions. Lewes emphasized mental toughness as much as physical skill, knowing that in the vast emptiness of North Africa, willpower could mean the difference between life and death. Among Lewis's most famous contributions was his invention of the Lewis bomb. This improvised explosive consisted of a mixture of plastic explosive, diesel fuel, and thermite. Its genius lay in its simplicity. Lightweight, easy to carry, and devastatingly effective against enemy aircraft lined up on remote airstrips. The bomb could ignite fuel tanks, melt through engines, and render planes useless in seconds. The Lewis bomb symbolized the kind of innovation that special operations required. In a theater where resources were limited and opportunities fleeting, improvisation was everything. Lewis's device became the SAS's signature tool in its earliest raids, crippling German and Italian air power and forcing the Axis to devote disproportionate resources to guarding their rear areas. It is no exaggeration to say that this one invention helped validate the SAS concept in its infancy. Those who served with Lewis remembered him as a man of contradictions. He was austere, sometimes aloof, but always respected. His high standards often made him seem cold, but his men understood that behind his severity was a deep commitment to their survival and effectiveness. He demanded much, total commitment, resilience, and precision, yet in return he offered clear purpose and an example of personal courage. Lewis's influence extended beyond training and invention. He embodied the spirit of intellectual soldiering, combining strategic foresight with practical know-how. Stirling later acknowledged that without Lewis, the SAS would not have been the same. In Stirling's words, if he himself had been the architect, Lewis was the engineer, ensuring the vision was not just imaginative but workable. Tragically, Jock Lewes's life was cut short at the very moment his ideas were bearing fruit. On the 30th of December 1941, during an SAS patrol in North Africa, his group came under fire from German aircraft. Lewis was killed in action just days after turning 28. His comrades were devastated. For Stirling, it was the greatest single blow the young unit suffered in its formative years. The man who had set the SAS's standards and created its unique tools would never see how far his work would carry. Lewis was buried in the desert he had come to master, far from his family and far from the fame that would later envelop his comrades. His story might have ended in obscurity, but his influence was already too deeply etched into the DNA of the SAS to be erased. Though overshadowed in the decades that followed by the more flamboyant David Stirling and the legendary Paddy Mayne, Jock Lewes's legacy has not vanished. Military historians now emphasize how crucial he was to the survival and success of the SAS in its infancy. His training methods, still recognizable in today's SAS ethos, continue to shape modern special forces across the world. His Lewis bomb is remembered as a model of battlefield ingenuity, and his insistence on discipline, endurance, and innovation remains the SAS hallmark. In the burning deserts of North Africa, in the ingenuity of the Lewis bomb, and in the very ethos of the SAS, Jock Lewes's mark lives on. A quiet yet indelible reminder that not all heroes are remembered equally, but some shape history more than most.